Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We have been overwhelmed by the response. This is clearly a topic that is on everyone's mind: how to message parents without overwhelming them. I'm Rebecca Honig. I'm the Director of Content and Curriculum at Ready for K. In my role, I build our curriculum at each grade level and write our messages along with an amazing team. Before joining Ready for K, I spent a decade as a curriculum specialist and then a writer for Sesame Street, creating parent guides, children's books, and scripts. I've written for Emmy Award winning shows on PBS, served as an education consultant for Disney and Nickelodeon, and created teacher and family resources for Scholastic, HITN, Compass Learning, WGBH, Mo Willems, and many others. I also spent 10 years teaching and have my own 3 young children to really keep me in check. And I've asked my colleague Mary to join us today. Mary is our director of marketing, and she'll introduce herself later when she chimes in. But Mary is amazing. So, why is Ready for K hosting this webinar? Because this is actually why Ready for K exists: to engage parents in their children's learning through simple tips and activities that are easy to do. No matter what your role, teacher, administrator, community-based organization, you are in the position of now having to reach parents with learning goals, with activities and resources. And this is what we do. Ready for K is an evidence-based family engagement program delivered via text message. We reach parents 3 times a week with a whole child curriculum, starting at birth and continuing through 4th grade. And many of you on this call are our partners. Some of you are considering signing up. We want everyone to know that we're making Ready for K free to educational organizations for the rest of the school year. We know that this tool is more crucial now than ever before. In this webinar today, our goal is to share what we know about messaging families and providing them with information in a way that does not scare or overwhelm them, in a way that empowers them, leverages their strengths, and accounts for their current levels of stress. To set the stage, I wanted to share a personal story. When you ask me for a fork, it makes me want to cry. I actually said these words to my 8-year-old daughter last week during dinner. When they landed on her ears, she cast me a look of utter shock and disbelief, like I had just revealed the truth about the tooth fairy or Santa. I could see her sort of recalibrating her perception of who I was, because I'd always seemed pretty together up until now. And this new version of me, this mom who cries when asked for a kitchen utensil, did not add up with her previous understanding of her mother. And she was not into it, and it clearly troubled her. What she didn't know is that it wasn't really the fork that was making me want to cry. It was the fact that we're in quarantine, that my friends are losing their jobs, that I can't go to the grocery store without having a panic attack, that my parents have developed coughs and low-grade fevers, and I am so scared. And I am not sleeping, because working full-time while also homeschooling your 3 children all in an 8-hour day is not really a thing. It's not a thing that I've figured out how to do anyway. And our family is fortunate. We've still got our jobs. We have a house to be quarantined in. And I have a master's in education, and I was a teacher. I have been creating family engagement resources for 20 years. But you know what? I am a mess. I think my good friend Takima Bunch Smith put it best in a recent post when she said, "Parents, let's be clear. You are not homeschooling your children right now. You are trying to manage yourself and your children during a major world crisis." And in charge of reaching and engaging families during this time, of giving them support, of guiding them as they slowly and fearfully step into their new role as teacher or learning guide, while they also navigate job loss, food insecurity, illness, and fear. And you likely have a lot of information you need to share with families, because you're not only supporting them in education, educating their children, you're supporting them in their health and wellness and their safety, and in some cases, their day-to-day survival. On this webinar, we'll offer insights based on our experiences reaching and activating parents. We'll share strategies for breaking down complex topics into manageable activities that parents can do with their children, writing with equity and empowerment in mind, quickly leveling your text to maximize accessibility, using layout and style to keep readers engaged, and crafting subject lines that motivate parents to read what comes next. Just a quick note, we've had a number of requests from partners for help sharing information with your colleagues and families through your social media channels. We're still in the process of setting up our social media system, but in light of the huge response to this talk, we wanted to make it easy as possible for you to share the content we're providing today. So we'll be live tweeting and posting content from this talk, and we'll be posting follow-up downloadables and news about our up and coming webinars. So you can follow us, you can do it right now, to get this content and more that will be coming very, very soon. So I'm going to start by sharing strategies for breaking complex educational topics and goals into activities that are easy for parents to do at home during challenging experiences. Every day, it's my job to translate a full year's curriculum into text messages. I've literally written tens of thousands of text messages orienting and activating families around ways to support their children's learning and development. And whether I'm writing math, literacy, and social emotional tips for our Whole Child Core program, or parental self-care and executive function messages for our trauma-informed program, or messages to bridge developmental learning gaps for our personalized learning program, I'm always using the same strategies. There's simple rules you can use to translate your complex and rich messages into something every one of your parents can understand and do. And I know these strategies work because we measure our success not by the number of families who get Ready for K messages or schools who signed up, but by how many parents say, yes, I use these messages. And that number is 94%. In our most recent survey, 94% of families report doing a Ready for K activity at least once a week with their child. We also conduct rigorous RTC research studies, and the Ready for K approach is proven to increase learning gains by 2 to 3 months. So when you make it easy for parents to help their children learn and grow, they will do it, and it will work. My number one strategy for translating high-level educational standards and goals into understandable, actionable messages for parents is to map the standard onto a what, a why, and a how. So let's say I wanted parents to help children build towards this kindergarten Common Core standard. Describe familiar people, places, things, and events, and with prompting and support, provide additional detail. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for a what. What do I want parents to do or know to help kids develop this skill? Now, there's a lot they could do, but I'm going to look for the thing that really leverages their unique relationship with their child. Parents are with kids during everyday tasks. They're together as they busily navigate housework and transitions like waking up. So an easy thing that I can ask them to do to build this skill above is to describe the things they're doing. In the classroom, you might have a whole center with tactile experiences and a writing and recording activity for kids to share observations and build descriptive language skills. But for home, describing what you do as you do it is a perfect match. So that's my what. So I've got my what, and now I need to let parents know why. And this is especially true right now as parents are under stress and have so much they are juggling. Why is this thing important? Why should it rise to the top, right? Why should parents choose to do this thing? Why should they describe what they're doing? And oftentimes there's a lot of whys, and I'd actually encourage you to jot all of them down and then choose the why that you think will be most compelling for your parents because you know them best. Then you take the why and the what and turn them into a singular statement. Looks a little something like this in our case. Describing the things you do builds language skills. These skills make it easier for kids to share their thoughts. Their reading skills get stronger too. So we've given a what, describe the things you do, and 2 compelling whys. helps kids share their thoughts, and it builds their reading skills. Now, I've told a parent about the thing I'm hoping they'll do and why it's important. And I've chosen a what and why that are a good match for their unique relationship with their child. Now I need a how. And I'm going to look for a how that's mapped right onto their daily routine. And the reason for this is that parents are much more likely to uptake a new activity or behavior if it is directly linked to something they are already doing. For example, if I'm already stirring a pot of soup, let's say, it's so much easier for me to count each stir or each sock as I'm already folding laundry than it is for me to go collect a bunch of pebbles in the backyard to do a counting activity with my child. When we map the how onto a pre-existing moment, we make the activity doable and familiar, and this is empowering, right? Because parents read it and they think, oh, I can do that. So here the how might be, describe what you're doing as you wash dishes, or describe what you're doing as you put on your child's socks or as you zip their coat. And I'll translate this how right into a quick activity for parents. So in this case, I wrote, describe your actions during daily activities. As you do the dishes, talk about it. Try, I'm pouring in the blue soap. Make sure to add lots of details. So just to recap, you want to choose a how that's doable for parents, activities that reflect things families are already doing, use supplies they already have at home, and build on their strengths and their unique relationship with their child. So now you can totally stop at a what, a why, and a how. But in our work, we offer one more activity that gives encouragement and a way to take the skill a little bit further and ever so slightly build to a more complex skill. For example, here, our next message would have the child describe what they're doing. So for example, keep describing. Now it's your child's turn. As they play a game, ask, what are you doing? Ask for details. How do you play? Or why do you like it? So in summary, when you're suggesting an activity you want a parent to do at home or a skill you want them to build, give a what, a why, and a how. What do I want families to do? Why is it important? How can they do it? The next strategy or rule to hold in mind is that words matter. Wording is a critical key to access and equity. It's oftentimes the difference between a message or a correspondence that feels overwhelming and distancing and one that feels inclusive and empowering. Right? In academia, we talk about using big $10 words, but those words aren't worth anything if people don't understand them and they make people feel bad about themselves. If those words trigger parents' own negative experiences with their own education or feelings of insecurity, they are hugely detrimental to your mission of supporting parents and caregivers and setting them up for success as they take on this new scary role of homeschooling their kids. When the first sentence of a communication has a word or concept that you're not familiar with or an idea that doesn't make sense, it distances you from everything that follows. You think, this isn't for me, or I don't know enough to do this. So you want to look for the simplest, warmest way to communicate the learning goal. And this can be hard because academic standards are full of jargon and insider language. So let's say you were needing to message families around this standard here. Count up to 10 objects using one-to-one correspondence, one object for each number word with increasing accuracy. If I were explaining this standard and why it's important to a family, I might just simply say, when children count objects one by one, they learn that we count to find out how many. Here's another standard a teacher might be working on. Fostering kids' ability to accurately assess one's strengths and limitations with a well-grounded sense of confidence, optimism, and a growth mindset. Here's how I might orient families around supporting this standard at home. Talking about things your child does well helps them learn about their own strengths. This builds their confidence and their independence. So one thing to note as you're doing this, sometimes I will be writing a fact message around a standard and I just can't explain it in simple terms. In this case, wording can be a flag. It can be an indicator that the concept you're asking parents to explore with their kids requires too much background knowledge. It requires a teacher, or supplemental materials. For example, just yesterday, I was asked to teach my daughter about distributive properties, and I about lost it. In those cases, I'll often take a step back from the standard and look for a different way to support the learning. You may get a much bigger win with a cross-cutting strategy that supports overall learning in a domain. When I was wanting to curl up in a ball and cry over distributive property, I needed a message like, your child may ask you for help with a math problem. Don't worry if you don't know the answers. You can help them come up with the answers on their own. And if your child is struggling with a math problem, ask, what are the steps for figuring this out? What do you do first? Then what? Can they show you? And finally, keep building math strategies. If a problem is still too hard, suggest, let's figure out your question and write it down so you can email the teacher. My next strategy is to level the text. So the average reading level in the United States is 7th to 8th grade, and that's under good circumstances. We are all stressed and multitasking, and I'd urge you to level your sentences with that in mind. Short, easy to read sentences are going to help you reach parents now more than ever. So here are some things you can do at a glance to shrink your reading level or to lower your reading level. You want to look for shorter sentences. Try for a period instead of a comma. Eliminate uncommon words. Try for words with less syllables and take out the extra descriptors. Less is more. Here's an example that puts these strategies to work. So this is the first sentence of a district communication recently received by my friend. Here we go. As we enter week 3 of the school closures, we continue to expand on the services we're providing to students and families. It sounds good, right? And it gives encouraging information, but this is actually written at an 11th grade reading level. This is measured by the Fleisch-Kincaid, by the way. Here's the text after I broke that one long sentence into 2 sentences and simplified a few of the words. Our school has been closed for 3 weeks. Each day we grow our services for students and families. This sentence, this comes in at a 2nd grade reading level. Let's do one more example. This is this next sentence in that correspondence I just read from the district. Our partnerships are increasing and we've done a lot of work to set up a distance learning program that will offer students engaging, empowering, and challenging curriculum. This comes in at a 15th grade. So we're in college now. After I've broken it down into 3 sentences instead of 1 and simplified the language, it reads, we have new partners. We've also set up a program for learning at home. Students will be engaged, empowered, and challenged by this new program. That's now at a 4th grade reading level. So the last strategy I'd just like to mention before handing the mic over to Mary is to hold your reader in your mind and in your heart when you write. And I imagine you are already doing this. You know your family's best. You know what they're going through right now. I'd urge you to picture individual families as you create messages and correspondence. You might even write a set of questions that you'll ask yourself before you press send. Would my families want to read this on their worst day? How about their best day? How will it make my families feel? Could my families read this while also doing X, Y, or Z, or while also feeling X, Y, or Z? This is the step that will reach them. This is the step that will make them feel held and supported by you so that they are better able to hold and support their children. Now I'm going to hand things over to Mary to talk about putting content into a layout that's compelling and easy to read.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's a pleasure to join you today and sharing some of the tips and tricks of our professions. When Rebecca introduced herself, she mentioned some organizations that I'm sure you're very familiar with. In my almost 20-year career, I have almost always worked in small or early stage companies that you're unlikely to have heard of. And I mention that because working in young and small companies means figuring out how to use basic tools like Microsoft Office and Google Suites to create professional quality communications. And as the spouse of a school administrator, I know that you are probably wearing lots of hats and don't have a professional writer or graphic designer on staff. But don't worry, because everything I'm going to share can be done with your own critical eye and commonly used email distribution systems like Gmail or Outlook. So as a professional marketer, my job is to share information in a way that is clear, specific, and motivates my audience to take action. And this might not typically be part of your job description, but in today's environment, motivating from a distance is the single most important thing that you can do. So let's help you write better emails that motivate parents to take action. So adding on to the 3 rules that Rebecca has already shared, we're going to pick it up at rule 4, and that is that short is sweet. This image is an email eye tracking heat map. What that means is you're looking at an email and they've tracked how people read the email. The red indicates where people had spent the most time and the blue indicates where they spent the least time. And you can see the rough outline of an F here. That's called the rule of F. Research has shown that people typically read the first 1.5 lines of text in a paragraph with less reading after the first paragraph. By the end, they're skimming and probably missing most of the content. So it's incredibly hard to let go of beautiful phrases and just right adjectives, as Rebecca and I can both completely empathize with. But adding those few extra words can push your highest priority messages into the no read zone. You do not want to lose your opportunity to motivate your parents. Keep it short and sweet. The second rule that I'm sharing, rule 5 in our countdown, is that if you use formatting, you're more likely to get people finding and taking action on your most important context. So on the left side, you're seeing text that I pulled from an email that I sent out earlier this week. This is, the kind of text that you're probably seeing come into your inbox as well. So adding a little bit of formatting helps my readers to actually catch the most important thing I have to share. I know my readers are busy and that they have to decide really quickly whether my message is the message that they need. We all do this. We all have full inboxes. We have to. So we're going to help our readers. You're going to help your families by using bullets, numbers, bold, and color judiciously to focus attention on those key words and phrases. I personally recommend choose one pop-out color. Don't go with the rainbow. And I do not recommend changing fonts. You can change your font size, make it a little bigger, but don't change the actual font because it can create formatting and readability problems and doesn't really help anything stand out, which is your goal. So help your families find the most important information in your message, because otherwise they might not find it at all. Next, I want to talk about your CTA, your call to action. This is the thing you want your families to do. In marketing, we include it in every message we share, in every advertisement you're going to see it. It's how we know whether our communications are working or not. If the reader doesn't take action, if your family doesn't do the thing you need them to do, whether it's attend a virtual event or submit a form, your message isn't doing its job. You have to give them something that they can immediately recognize and act on. So it should be crystal clear and completely unmissable. So I gave you an example email that I received yesterday or a couple days ago. And in this, you'll see right at the top, this is the thing they want me to do. Halfway down the page, they're highlighting it again. And finally, there's an additional link so that I am not going to miss the message. I know exactly what I need to do to take advantage of the opportunity. In fact, the CTA, the call to action, was also the subject line of the email. And that brings us to the next rule. Subject lines, grab your reader from go. Don't waste your best shot at getting your family's attention. Craft a great subject line that tells them exactly what you're going to be sharing with them. It should be your headline. Treat your subject line like it's your headline. So I've, basically out of my own email pulled 2 different messages. One is pretty much what I'm getting from the district every single day. These kind of district news updates, subject lines, they don't tell me anything about what's inside, and they make it really hard to use these emails as a resource after a few days have passed. The second email, which I got from a professional marketer, tells me what I'm going to be reading about. And it also helps me in a week when a friend calls to say, sharing our home computer with my 3 kids isn't working. I can go into my email box, immediately find the message that's going to help them and share it with them. If you've only got one message, make it the subject line. Make it the headline news that virtual attendance is mandatory starting April 13th. If you're sending a digest, and we're going to get to digests in a bit, don't make it Tuesday's update. Grab the most important piece of news you have to share and put it in your subject line. More meals provided, virtual prom, and more. And finally, I just want to say that we are all going through a rough time to one degree or another, and your families know that you care. They know you and your staff are doing your best, and they know events are unfolding in real time. If you want to put in a note that your families are on your mind and in your heart, make it succinct and make it your closing. Otherwise, you could be stealing time and attention from the actionable news that you really need them to have and to act on. Finally, the bonus rule, you probably have 5 or 6 things that you want to share. These are news, resources, updates, and all kinds of things that you really feel are important for parents to have access to or information about. Parents across the country are getting dense emails like this one that are filled with blue links to all kinds of resources and mission critical information about policies, mandates, maybe access to different kinds of resources in the community. And you can tell, based just on the content that Rebecca and I shared so far, that some of these resources and messages are gonna get missed, unfortunately. You don't want that to happen to your important messages. And there's a really easy way to improve these information-rich emails. Make them a digest. So you don't need a graphic designer, you don't need a fancy template. You can create an easy to read template in any system that you can reuse. This is one that I put together in Gmail in about 10 minutes. It's not going to win any prizes, but it will help direct attention, it'll help focus attention, it'll help highlight your CTA, and that's what you're going for, your call to action. So Gmail gives you the option of saving your emails as templates. So once you build it once, you can use it every time you've got a lot to share with your families. Most email systems that you're probably using are going to let you do this. Some specific things. Content lists are your friend. First of all, a lot of email systems are going to pull out the very top thing that you share. So putting it right up top is going to help during that early first grab of the email. It also saves the reader time once they've opened it, because not everyone is going to need everything in your digest. You need to honor the attention that they are paying to you by letting them know what they can skip. And it also draws attention to the end of message content that they're likely to miss. If you think back to that first rule that I shared, the content toward the bottom is the content they're more likely to miss. Having a content list so that they can see right at the top, oh, the thing I need is number 4, that's going to help them not miss the thing that matters to them. Use headers. Headers with simple takeaways will help your reader understand which text is worth their time, and it's a great way to create visual distinctions that we talked about earlier. And finally, each of these sections should have a call to action, even if it's just what to do if they want more information, because readers really find it frustrating when they're provided information about something without knowing whether or not they're supposed to do something with it. So even if it's just information, go ahead and add, have any questions? Email us. And finally, I'm just going to put in a quick pro tip. Put your higher value content toward the bottom of your digest and then make it your subject line. Your families are more likely to scan through and catch more of your maybe less exciting content, but still important content, if they're looking for the thing that you promised, the really exciting news that you put in that subject line. So I'm going to leave it there and turn it back over to Rebecca to close us out, and then we'll have questions.
Great. Yeah, we're just going to quickly recap our high-level concepts and tricks and tips that we shared. I'll start with mine. When sharing activities, or really any information for that matter, with families, look for a what, a why, and a how. What do I want them to know? Why is it important? And how can they do it? Create a what, a why, and a how that really leverage their relationship with their child and builds off of things they're already doing. This is your strength-based approach. Stay away from high-level words in favor of words that make sense at a glance. Level your text, look for short and active sentences. And finally, picture your families when you write. Mary's going to orient you around her takeaways.
So to get that great content read, you've just invested a ton of time applying Rebecca's great tips. You want to get that content fed. So make sure that your communications are short and sweet. Use formatting to draw the eye to the most important takeaways, that one phrase you do not want them to miss. Give your families or your reader an unmissable call to action. What is the next step? How do they take it? Use your subject line. And right-size your personal note so that it's not taking the place in their mind of the action items that you need them to take. And finally, if you've got a lot to share, make it a digest.
So we're about to open it up for questions. Before we do that, we just wanted to encourage you to please take up on our offer to give your families Ready for K through the end of the school year for free. All the strategies we shared today go into making our messages. And we know based on years of experience that it can really be a lifeline for many of our families. We're making this offer because this is the time when parents need doable ways to support learning more than ever. We've versioned all of our content to be responsive to the COVID pandemic. All activities take place in the home, and we give additional messaging on parental self-care and coping with pandemic anxiety. Everything's available in English, Spanish, and Arabic. We also give our partners their own messaging stream so they can message on critical resources, supplies, and community updates. So you can write your own messages to families and put all the strategies we discussed today right into action in your messages. If you haven't filled out the online application, it only takes a few minutes and a member of our team will follow up to answer all of your questions, and we can get your families enrolled quickly through our SIS integration and have the messages reaching and supporting your families within a week. We've shared a lot of information with you today, and we're now excited to answer your questions, any questions you might have. We'll turn it over to our colleague, John, our Director of Technology, who will be our moderator. And again, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon.
Thank you, Rebecca. So the first question that we had that I was unable to answer myself was, how can we translate these rules to non-standard based messaging?
Got it. So if by standards you mean academic standards, I would say that the how, what, and why, the what, why, and how sort of paradigm really works for any communication. If I were messaging on parental self-care, or even picking up free and reduced lunches at a set location, I would want to let parents know what the thing is, why it's important, this is the motivator, and how to do it. And certainly all of the tips around leveling your text, around really taking a strength-based approach and building all of your messaging around things that feel familiar to parents is hugely important. A little empowerment can go a long way. We are all so overwhelmed. So when the thing you're asking a family to do feels doable, even under really difficult circumstances, they are just going to be so much more motivated to do it, and they're going to feel good about it, which is going to make them want to keep it up.
Great, thanks. Next up is a question for Mary. Mary, how did you create the template that you used in Gmail?
Oh, it was super simple. So I opened up, there are two different ways to interpret that question. One is, how did I make it into a template? And that is just, it's a save feature at the bottom of an email that you can save as template. And I would be happy, going back, Rebecca mentioned that we're going to be sharing some stuff through social media, and I can put together a walkthrough, some screen grabs, but that's very easy to do. And then other than that, just highlighting text and saying, make it large versus small, changing the color, all of those are options right in Gmail. So I just used exactly what was in the system and then saved it as a template.
Great, thank you. Rebecca, a question for you that I know you have a good answer to. Somebody wants to know what kind of tools you use to check the reading level of your text.
Yep. So, so Lexile is one of the tools we regularly use. This is what would be used to level any trade publication. You see it right on the back of the book. The Flesch-Kincaid actually comes on your computer. So you actually just go into preferences and you click on spelling and grammar. And there's a box that says show readability statistics. If you click that, anytime you do a spelling and grammar check, like you can just highlight a sentence, go to spelling and grammar. It'll say, do you want to keep checking this document? Say no. Those readability statistics will pop right up. So that's a really easy way. The one thing I'll say about the Flesch-Kincaid is it's like the most strict. So you might find that something comes in at a really high reading level with Flesch-Kincaid, and then you run a Lexile on it, and it's a little lower. So Lexile is a little more forgiving and more nuanced. You can also access Lexile for free. If you just Google the Lexile leveler, you can pop your text right into it. And that is a great leveling tool as well. If you're leveling like child-facing content, I would recommend Fountas and Pinnell. That's what's most commonly used for guided reading with kids.
Great. Thank you. There are a few questions about Ready for K. Specifically, how often do the messages go out? How do you choose the scope and sequence of messages to go out? So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the messages go out 3 times a week, and it's year round. So, and again, the content starts at birth and continues through 4th grade, although someone could jump in at any point in that trajectory. In terms of choosing, like scoping the content. So I have 2 brains that I think with. The one is I'm looking at the flow of the school year at each grade level, and all the messages I should mention are age and grade specific. So a child is getting messages to support their learning at their grade level. But the thing is if I just follow that trajectory, if I just follow the classroom trajectory, I'm kind of ignoring the parent, because there are some skills we've got to help parents develop before they can support the more complex academic standards. So we would start with messaging around following your child's lead as they learn, engaging in hands-on learning, the importance of asking open-ended questions and having language-rich discussions, of getting down to your child's eye level. So that's sort of my process, is I kind of look at, okay, what skills does the parent have to have in place in order to be able to support the child's learning? And then once we've established that, we're kind of good to go on really aligning with the flow of the school year.
Wonderful, thank you. And can you explain the language options that Ready for K is available in?
Sure. So it's currently available in English, Spanish, and Arabic. And I should note, and this is actually important to this discussion as well, our translation is not a straight translation. So our translators also translate with cultural sensitivities in mind. For example, in some cultures, a mirror would not be used. So our Arabic translator might shift that activity a little bit. Same goes for Spanish translation. We're really trying to be sensitive to the lived experiences of our users. So our process is one in which they are translating and versioning the content.
Great, thank you. So I'm mindful of the time. There's a lot of great questions, too many to answer in the time remaining. So we will follow up on email with some of the specific questions and make as many of the questions are whether this presentation will be available afterwards. It will. We will send out the deck as well as a recording of what you've been listening to. And we will follow up individually with some of the other questions that we didn't have time to answer.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
We could stay on here all day with you. This has been such a pleasure, and we will continue to answer from afar. And thank you again for joining us.